Joining us now live in studio, Andrew V. here. And Andrew, thanks for being with us.
John, this is great.
Really appreciate it. I love when you come down, and it's good to be in studio here and get back to the home base. And joining us now, Dave Brat, Dr. Dave Brat, Congressman, 7th District, Virginia. I think he's Andrew's congressman, isn't he, Andrew?
He is.
Andrew's congressman. So, Dave, you have a constituent here. Plus, you want to open the phone lines up. People are always complaining, oh, Dave won't take my calls. Well, here's your chance. 888-480-JOHN, 888-480-5646. Joining us now, Congressman Dave Brat. Dave, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, great to be on with both of you guys.
I know, right? So can we get to the president's tweets? Do you mind? Because I kind of saved these for the congressman here. So here's what comes out today, 21 minutes ago, Congressman. Ready? The president tweets out, look, for all you people out there that say Dave Brat doesn't do town halls, Dave Brat doesn't take calls, here he's just coming on. I'm just like reading him tweets, right? He's going to have to respond to it. So the president tweets out, John Brennan is panicking. Okay, just that makes me laugh. Then he says he has disgraced himself. He has disgraced the country. He has disgraced the entire intel community. He's the one man who is largely responsible for the destruction of Americans' faith in the intelligence community and in some people at the top of the FBI. Brennan started this entire debacle about President Trump. We know now that Brennan had detailed knowledge of the phony dossier. He knows about the dossier. He denies knowledge of the dossier. He briefs the Gang of Eight on the Hill about the dossier, which was then utilized to start an investigation about Trump. It's that simple. This guy is the genesis of this whole debacle. This was a political hit job from the beginning. This was not an intel investigation. Brennan has disgraced himself, and he's worrying about staying out of jail. And he quoted all this from Dan Bongino, the president, sending this out. And yesterday, sending out a tweet basically saying that his campaign was infiltrated by an FBI spy. Congressman, what do you make of this whole thing?
Yeah, well, we're waiting for more and more evidence, and we're getting it day by day. Brennan and then Clapper came out with a series of bombshells published by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times this week. And so the Wall Street Journal, Kim Strassel, and the New York Times also reported the FBI had a mole or a spy or whatever working in the Trump campaign early on. That has not been reported yet, and so that's huge. And then you go into the dossier and all that, and then there's these three names of the lawyers, Cohen and Papadopoulos and all that. And the question is, where did those names come from? And those names come from if you got a spy and the FBI working on the inside of a campaign of the opposition party, right? That's what's important to note here. Is that Trump was the opposition party to the Democrats who were in office and controlled the Justice Department and the CIA and the FBI and National Intelligence. And Clapper, and this will be interesting, right, to see how related these three are, right? Brennan and Clapper and Comey. And finding the connected dots. But Clapper comes out this week, a few days ago, after the evidence comes out and says, well, it would be good to have somebody spying on the president's campaign. Not the president at the time, but on the Trump campaign, because he knows the evidence out there. And so, the American people, this is shocking stuff. When the intelligence community has a spy inside someone running for president of the United States, and there's evidence, right, that the Hillary campaign, the Democrats. The dossier was funded by the Democrats. There's no debate on that. And the alignment of the current administration, the current Obama administration, with the DCCC, with the three heads of the intelligence organizations, as evidence continues to come in, this is a huge problem going forward.
So, Congressman, I think you're right about this. I really do. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on or whether you like Trump or don't, or you like Clinton or don't. I don't think it matters now. And when you look at what potentially happened here is that the FBI put an informant basically feigning to be a pro-Trump supporter and going to these people as a Trump supporter, which he was clearly not, and trying to dig up dirt and get information. not necessarily that he was embedded in the campaign, like he was a campaign manager paid by both parties like a double agent, but he was hired by the FBI to call Trump officials and to get dirt. Now, first of all, again, Papadopoulos was never paid by the Trump campaign. He was a guy on a piece of paper. Same thing with Carter Page. I think both of them were in one meeting. At this stage of the campaign, the Trump operation was looking for supporters with foreign relations credibility. They were not paid staffers or involved in any decision-making. But the fact of the matter is the FBI hires somebody to infiltrate the campaign and dig up stuff as an informant paid by the FBI in the middle of a presidential campaign. Don't you find that to be troubling?
Oh, that's the new bomb that is more than troubling. I mean, that rises to the level of Watergate if we connect all these dots and they seem to point where they're going. And then, I mean, at the FBI itself, you have Comey fired, and then 8 of the top political appointees have either been fired or stepped down or reassigned or whatever. And the texts, right, talking about having a backup plan in case Trump wins, coming from high up political appointees in the FBI. And so that's not smoke, right? That's fire. And those texts are why the Congress has subpoenaed the Attorney General, Sessions, and the FBI to turn over the rest of those documents that they've been slow walking and redacting and, marking over with black ink. And in 2 of those cases, they said this is national security concerns. We can't do that. And in both of those cases, when they came out, it turns out there was no national security concern. And so that piece alone is a huge piece of concern for the American people. When you have your intelligence agencies lying to you, they're not lying to Congress. We represent the people. They're lying to the American people who hires them and pays the tab for them to lie to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so this thing gets worse by the day. But at least we're seeing, and at least the swamp is getting drained to this extent that the American people are finding out how incoherent our intelligence agencies are right now.
It seems the only national security concern is that the Obama administration weaponized the federal government's intelligence and law enforcement communities against a political opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And you forget to leave off almost the biggest piece. You got Loretta Lynch meeting with former President Clinton on the tarmac. I mean, you just forget these huge pieces of the story. And that's weaponizing information to make sure you got your stories straight with the Attorney General of the United States. I mean, you couldn't write this stuff up in a mystery book. No one would believe it's true.
This is the stuff that they have traditionally told Republicans and conservatives, oh, you're just being crazy, take your tinfoil hat off, this conspiracy doesn't exist. But you see all these dots being connected. You've got the text, you've got Peter Strzok and his mistress at the FBI talking about ways to knock out Trump. You've got the Attorney General meeting with the candidate's husband on a private, no staff allowed meeting in Phoenix. And then all of this comes to light, and it's hard not to draw the conclusion.
And then you got the McAuliffe $700,000 campaign donation to a political neophyte. What was her name? Dr.
McCabe. Jill McCabe.
Dr. Jill McCabe, which at first I didn't really think much of because,
they put a lot of money in that year. They were trying to take back the
Northern
Senate.
people were telling me they recruited her and this and that. But, the more you read into this, the more dubious that whole thing has become. And now I've actually done a 180 on it, and I don't have any doubt that McAuliffe was trying to, at the very least, 2 birds with a single stone hit with the $700,000. But you got all this stuff coming out. Your Godzilla of the truth with Congressman Dave Brat, Republican, 7th District of Virginia. He's up for re-election for a 3rd term in November 2018 midterms. He's going to be in a tough race, no question about it, with the climate and the environment going on. I think it's one of the most important elections in the country that we put Dave back in there because he tells you like it is, and you don't get a lot of people in Congress that'll come on the air every day. Andrew, or every week, one of the things that amazes me is the criticism that the congressman gets for not having town hall meetings or not being open to be. The guy's everywhere. Hussey comes on my show every single week. If you want to ask him a question, pick up the phone and stop whining. 888-480-JOHN.
I got to vouch for Dave. I see him and his family in church almost every Sunday. So he is in the district. He's very accessible.
So it's ridiculous. I mean, look, you want to criticize him on his stance is fine, but to say that he's inaccessible is asinine. It's just
Hey, I'll just tell you guys one quick short story. The Washington Post wanted to do a political story, and I don't do these horse race stories, so I thought I wouldn't do it. So the guy comes down from the Washington Post, is in a room full of 200 business professionals, and leaves that out of his story on inaccessibility. Right? It's front page of the Washington Post. And so if you want fake news, there it is. Then a few weeks later, the Wall Street Journal, who should be, you would think, pro-business, whatever, but they have some issues too. A person comes down from the Wall Street Journal. I'm in a room with 400 people with a rabbi in the temple and Don McEachin, the Democrat, with 400 people, open Q&A on political philosophy, ethics, religion, right? Those are fairly sensitive topics. I'm out in front of hundreds of people talking about it, open to Q&A, and the press will not cover it. And so it's not that I'm not doing it. They're not covering it, and it's more than they're intentionally not covering it, and that is fake news. I wish they would report the news fully, and if they'd ever cover fully the town halls I had in Chesterfield and Blackstone, you'd see why not. But the left is shutting down free speech and wouldn't allow my constituents to even ask questions and be heard.
Well, and the Wall Street Journal doesn't want anything to do with you either, because you're not for open borders, you're not for globalization, you're not for cheap labor, you're not for getting rid of the China tariffs, you're not for any of that. So they have no utilization for you either, because they're a slave basically to Goldman Sachs and Wall Street. My narrative, not yours, just for the record. So let's get to what happens now. I mean, we've got this spy in the Trump campaign. He's been outed. I think the Daily Caller read his name. I'm not sure if we can say that on the air. I'm going to wait till other people do, so I don't charge. But if you want to know who the person is, he's a college professor, and the name was released this weekend by the Daily Caller. So you can go to dailycaller.com there and figure it out. So this guy was hired. He was an FBI informant, hired by the FBI to infiltrate the Trump campaign. Obviously came up with nothing, because there is nothing. But just the scope and specter of that. I mean, that you're utilizing the Department of Justice and the FBI to spy on a rival campaign in the fall where the polls were tightening. I mean, that just, for the average person, Congressman, that just can't look good.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you just kind of went back to the thesis statement, too. The scope of what? And it's the scope of the investigation that's supposed to be occurring, and the thesis statement is supposed to be about Russian collusion, right? And so we're about 2 years in, and they cannot name, and Alan Dershowitz is the hero on this, right? He's a liberal civil liberties person who believes in the First Amendment still. And he said the relevant criterion the whole way is name the statute that's been violated. And so they're on a huge fishing expedition now on everybody's business 20 years ago or whatever, underneath the auspices and scope of the original position, which they're supposed to be looking for Russian collusion. And they don't have any. And there's nothing there. And so this is hugely problematic when the federal government is going after people, and then they're using their authority to first get the dossier, and then to get warrants against American citizens to go spy on them using the dossier, right? And so every American ought to be very concerned. If your federal government can go after these people, they can go after you, and that's a federal government that's gotten too big and too powerful and too arrogant.
You know, and John and I were talking about this earlier today. They go after you with unlimited resources. Mm-hmm. And these people in Trump's inner circle are fairly wealthy individuals, but they're having to put up homes for mortgage and take out, close out their savings account. If they were to come after an average person, it would ruin their life. It would bankrupt them.
Yeah, and then they would just have to plea it out, whatever the charge is. I mean, you have no choice. Look, they destroyed General Michael Flynn, right? No evidence on him, completely destroyed his life, took his savings, took his house. And, the federal government, if they want to go after you, they're going to find something, right? Because they have, again, unlimited resources. I remember when they were going after Bob McDonnell, Congressman, they put 50, this is what I heard, they put 50 federal agents in Richmond. 50.
Yep.
Right?
No, it's unbelievable. I sit on the small business committee, and we have cases. We represent small farmers, et cetera, and some under asset forfeiture, seizure. The government will go after their assets, and there's been mistakes. And so the problem there is these farmers are just getting by, right? Income-wise, or it's a hard living. A lot of these guys come in, they're not wealthy. Just the startup cost to defend themselves for the federal action is $20,000 to $30,000, and they don't have it after their assets have already been seized from the bank, right? $50,000 of their savings are wiped out of their bank account. And so if nothing else, hopefully something good comes out of this, right, for our constituents. And that is we need to change this litigious society, right, the litigation society, to the point that the small guy cannot be abused because they don't have the financial resources to fight back against the government.
How do we do that?
And we're, in our committee, we're changing the law. We're rewriting the law on that asset forfeiture piece. But we need to do that more broadly to give the average person a fighting chance.
Well, good for you. Congressman, I'm out of time. People want more information. It's really easy. Best website ever, DaveBrat.com. See, that's so easy. I don't even have to ask him what it is. DaveBrat.com. That's one I've got memorized. Go to DaveBrat.com. Congressman, it's always an honor to have you on, sir.
Hey,
Thank
great
you.
to be on with both of you guys.